So hello, thank you for being here. So I already told you that, but the event is recorded. So if you don't feel comfortable, you can turn off your camera. And I'm Julia. I use the pronoun she, and I work at La Centrale as coordinator, communication, archives, and cultural mediation. And I'm very happy to welcome you to the Artist Talk with B.G Osborne today. And thank you, B.G, for being here too.
Thank you.
So La Centrale Powerhouse is an artist run center dedicated to the dissemination and development of multidisciplinary feminist practices. La Centrale is an artist run center committing to supporting practices and artists that are not very visible in the dominant cultural institutions. And we are also committed to supporting artists at different stages of their careers. So we develop programming that engage with feminisms and support intersectionality and social justice. So I'm going to put some link in the chat if you want to follow La Centrale in social media. So here we go. And before going any further, I would like to acknowledge that La Centrale Gallery Powerhouse, as myself and most of the participants in this event, are located on indigenous lands, Jojage, which was never been ceded. We also recognize the Ganangeagan nation as a custodian of the lands and waters on which we gather today. So we respect the continued connection with the past, present, and future in an ongoing relationship with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. So since this event is online, we also acknowledge that other participants may be on different territory. So I would like to invite you to offer your own land acknowledgements now. So if you want, you can like unmute yourself and do a land acknowledgement. Okay, I don't see any raised hand or microphone unmute, so I'm gonna keep going. That's okay. Okay. So we are meeting today online, and we are aware that this is a privilege that is not available to everyone. So if you need special assistance, you can let me or Mattia, my coworker, hi Mattia, you can let us know, and we will like help you in any way we can. And also you can send us email by replying to the email with this Zoom link that I send you today. So we also wanted to acknowledge that the digital technology on which we depend to come together today are complicit in the destruction of land and deepen the injustice brought about by the culture of white supremacy in which we live. I just wanted to say that we want this talk to be as safe as possible, so we will not tolerate inappropriate comments, and we reserve the right to exclude any person whose behavior is deemed problematic by La Centrale, the artist, or by another participant. So as this conversation might be challenging and triggering, I want to do like a content warning about transphobia, violence and murder, and also trauma. Today we have the chance to talk with B.G Osborne. Thank you, B.G, again for being here, about their work, and more specifically the work A Thousand Cut. And A Thousand Cut has been shown at La Centrale just a few weeks ago. A Thousand Cut is a 3-channel found footage video installation that addresses the misrepresentation of trans people in film and television and the ongoing reality of violence that transgender transsexual people encounter. The video is comprised of appropriate footage of 48 film and 34 television series and one music video ranging from 1953 to 2015. So the video compilation is accompanied by a single channel scrolling text video listing over 1,000 names of documented trans murder victims from January 2016 to September 2020. And the data was compiled by Trans Respect versus Transphobia Worldwide. B.G Osborne is a queer bi-gender settler of Scottish and British descent, born and raised on Treaty 20 territory, Southern Ontario, currently working on Jojage, also known as Montreal. B.G Osborne ongoing project seek to address the complexity and revisionary potential of gender variant representation and embodiment, and unpack the experience with mental illness and well-kept family secrets. They place a great importance in showcasing their work in artist-run centers and non-commercial gallery across Turtle Island. So I have a few questions to start the conversation with B.G Osborne, and then you will be able to ask questions And but also if you feel like you need to ask a question at some point, you can also do so. So if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand, or you can like unmute yourself. But also if you want to ask like an anonymous question, you can write to me in private on Zoom, and I will like read the question without saying your name. And so the first question I have for you, Beck, is about the context of the creation of 1,000 Cat. If you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, just to first off to check, can everyone hear me okay? We're good? Okay. So the context, initially I started 1,000 Cuts while I was doing a practicum at the Vamp Center in 2016. So I was feeling very isolated as a trans person and just very burnt out. Although I was in such a beautiful space, me and my partner were the only trans people that we knew of in Banff in general. So we just felt really disconnected and didn't have that sense of community. And, it was like an ongoing frustration of just like reading again and again in the news of like another trans person, specifically trans women of color, Black trans women are being murdered at disproportionate rates throughout the world. So just having all of this information that was coming at me, as well as, media representation that I grew up with and have continued to see that's misrepresenting trans people, it just kind of, it felt like a buildup of frustration and just wanting to somehow communicate that. So it started off pretty modestly of just, me trying to hunt down as many clips as I could from different movies and TV shows where I had seen like some sort of representation or a trope about like a trans person or character. And the end product is by no means extensive. This piece could have easily had gone on for hours. But for my own mental health, it needed to be it needed to stop at some point. So yeah, it was created out of frustration and wanting to maybe shine a light on how cisgender people consume media culture, especially about trans people and two-spirit people, gender variant people, and just kind of bring like an awareness to how problematic that representation has been throughout history. And things are changing, yes, for the better, but even in when I started this piece in 2016, things weren't great, even though we had passed that transgender tipping point, which was written about 2 years earlier. We can get to that a little bit later maybe, but so yeah, it was, frustration, isolation, and just wanting to try to start making work when I was like working a job that was related to other people's artwork. I wasn't there on like doing a residency or anything. So yeah, that's.
Thank you for that, Beck. And can you tell us like maybe more specifically about the work in progress, like how you made the video itself?
So from about 2016 to 2018, it was I was developing it and like adding video works to it once in a while. So I just mostly was using what I could find on YouTube or my own video collections and digitizing certain parts of it, and just started organizing it on a hard drive and just having like as many titles as I could find. I would, a lot of it again is stuff I'd already watched. So I had already maybe some selections in mind as far as what pieces of certain films I wanted to focus on. Other ones caught me by surprise, or, friends knew I was working on the project, so they recommended, oh, have you seen this? Did you see that episode? Like, so it just kept snowballing. And then, yeah, it got to a point where I kind of just had to stop adding. I realized that it felt impossible for it to be like, Christian Marclay's The Clock or something. Like there was no way I was going to make it like a 24-hour or like hours and hours. There was no need for that. I had to cut it off at a point where I felt like it was telling the story that I wanted it to, or getting the point across. So yeah, a lot of tedious work, a lot of like, I'm an archivist as well. So I have that training and that kind of archival brain. I can go through and like do this kind of tedious or like really time consuming work. And I'm interested in that work. So yeah, it was it's a long process, and it, yeah, it took a bit for me to figure out when it was like done enough, I guess, to like to show it, like to exhibit it. So
I think maybe in the same like direction, maybe you can tell us a little bit how you choose the film and extract.
I mean, that's always interesting because, yeah, I feel like any other artists obviously would come up with a completely, there obviously would be some overlap between what films are selected, but I'm sure there's so many I left out that people would be like, well, why didn't you think of this one? But so again, a lot of it was based on stuff I grew up with. Even growing up, like I was born in the 90s, but I still, this is all like movies that I watched as like a kid and teenager and young adult, and like didn't realize while I was watching it that like, although it was the only representation I had of people like me, that it wasn't good. It took a while to get to that point to realize, no, we need to be like, we should be telling our own stories, and there needs to be more criticality of this, of all like these films, of these television shows, the way that trans people are just being kind of plopped in as like comedic relief, or the men in the dress trope, or the sexual deviant, the murder victim. Like there's, I got really tired of like seeing, it was tricky. Like there's some films that I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. It would, sometimes it just felt like, for the most part, I didn't feel like I was making like a conscious decision a lot of the time. Sometimes I was, and I would always revisit it afterwards. But when I was just initially like rewatching these videos, sometimes it was like the first time I've seen the work in like years. It was just like no, that right there, that piece needs to be in it. It was just like an intuitive, this makes sense to me. And then as I went on, I was realizing that there was like a theme sort of to like how I was selecting certain clips. And then that was when the arranging started to come in. And that took a while to like get not under control. I don't like saying that, but like it was very easy for it to get out of hand because of all the audio and video. I had to like be selective of like what audio I kept to overwhelm people the right amount, so you could still kind of comprehend what was going on. Yeah, so short answer to that question, the films kind of pick themselves, and then also it's just, stuff that's from popular culture. I wanted it to be stuff that cisgender audience members especially would be like, oh yeah, I watched Ace Ventura, I took my kid to that, or just commonplace stuff that you wouldn't really think about. But yeah.
Thank you, Beck. And also, I think it's very interesting because you're also an archivist. So maybe like there was something that in the work related to your work as an archivist.
That's fun. It took me a while to put that together too, because I started the project before I became an archivist, but it was like those inclinations or like tendencies have always been there, like to like meticulously comb through things from our histories. I guess that's the best way I can put it. Like I'm obsessed with finding, just researching things and discovering things through looking through like material culture. That's really exciting to me, and I feel like it's really important. Like, as I feel like we should be interrogating the work that has come before us, and stuff like content you find in archives as well. Like that's a whole other conversation about access and engaging with archives in a meaningful and critical way. So that's essentially that's what I was trying to do with this. I ended up creating like a mini archive of you know, problematic or like misrepresentation of trans people in popular culture, and then just wanted to do something with that and like just kind of study it in a way, and bottom line, bring attention to how like how problematic it is and how this is not serving anybody. So
Thank you. And do you want to talk about like the other element of the installation besides the video?
mhm. So when the work started, before the pandemic, I had initially shown it in a couple of places with like a takeaway poster about 12 by 18, and it listed all the names of documented murdered trans people worldwide. And that's just documented people. So we know off the bat there you're missing, like you don't know how many. So it was like a list of, I think, 3 years collected names, and it was just like a really beautiful takeaway poster. And I didn't have that available at this show, obviously, because it's a window exhibition and with the pandemic. So what I did is I expanded it to cover all the names, like the documented names that we have from, yeah, I believe it was when I started the project, so early, like 2016, up until the most recent names we have. So just like this, and it was a scrolling text video. So that was the scrolling text video in the window. Because for me, like I feel when I initially made this work, I was like, okay, there has to be something that commemorates, you know, the people that are being taken from our, like my communities or our communities as trans people, because of the misrepresentation. Like it's not solely because of that, but like the misrepresentation that we have dealt with historically, it does lead to, it leads to a lack of compassion, a lack of understanding, a lack of love. There's no love or care, which leads to real life violence. That's at the core, like what this is trying to do is, you know, link those two things very directly. And I am a very literal person. Like I'm like very blunt as well. And I know that can come across in my artwork sometimes. So, but you know, not always a bad thing, I guess. And then, yeah, so that was the takeaway poster was a big piece, a big part of this piece. Although the scrolling text video, I think that was, I liked how that worked out as well. And when the show was previously shown, when it was shown in Portland, I had a large piece of chain link fence, which had a few, like some commemorative objects, and like people who came to visit the show were welcome to put, like you could bring something and put it on the fence as you took a poster to kind of have this give and take. So I did miss that, like that aspect of the show was really like important for me, but I think where we ended up, like showing this work at La Centrale in like the window and making me in my van the exhibition coordinator who helped me put up the show, we decided to cut out the audio completely, like not because there wasn't, we weren't sure how to navigate having the speaker system on like a public street. And then it also just kind of felt less important in 2021, if that makes sense. Like I started like conceptualizing this work so many, like 5 years ago, and we are at a point now with trans representation in media, like where we have so many more trans actors and producers and directors, and like we're on both sides of the camera now, more so than we have ever been. And it kind of felt nice just to like tell my compilation to shut the fuck up in a way, you know, like it was just like, okay, we don't need this to have to, you know. So that was a fun experiment. I'd never tried that before. Yeah.
Thank you. And so, as this is not the first time you have shown this piece, maybe you can tell us about how this work has been received by the public and by institutions.
Well, by the public, very well received. However, it depends who you talk to. I would say since this work was initially, like it's intended primarily for cisgender audiences, but that ended up, you know, I've had some tricky conversations with like other trans community members where this work has been like triggering or like it's just too much. Because you know what, we've seen it, we've been there, we're dealing with this. It just felt like the work wasn't for them, and they could kind of, you can take away something from it, but that was really apparent. It was like, well, this work, it's more so for cis people, because it's trying to like shine that light back on how cis people have represented us. So mostly the work has been well received. Like people, I haven't had any negative comments necessarily, but except for when it was shown in Calgary, which is how this work came to be more well known in Canada, which I find frustrating, but is also kind of funny, because the work faced quite a lot of censorship. It was at the New Gallery, and the New Gallery was wonderful to work with. It was shown in their window space, which used to be at Arts Commons in Calgary, and I think five galleries in total, maybe a few more, had window spaces in that. It's like a vitrine space, so it's like a long hallway with window exhibitions. So my work was showing there, and Arts Commons reached out to the New Gallery saying, well, we can't, you need to cut out this, this, and this from the work, because we've had a lot of complaints from a lot of different people, which meant we've had 3 complaints that they had 3. Obviously I don't know who, but like a lot of, and which isn't the point, but a lot of like younger like classes go through there, and like religious groups apparently. So it was told to me that this work was not appropriate for people who are religious or for children, which was a lot. I said, well, that's, you know, I'm not censoring my own work. And the issue they had with the work was a lot of swearing. There were maybe like, there's a handful of instances of swearing in it, but like pretty mild stuff. And one scene of non-sexual nudity, which is very hard to pick out unless you're looking for it. So the work got censored. I said, no, I'm not taking it down. So they took down the videos, but there was still a large poster of all the names of trans people who have been taken from us in the vitrine, and they took that out too. So that was kind of like a last straw for the New Gallery, and a lot of other galleries. 5 of them, they pulled out their contracts are done with Arts Commons. They ended them because they were not, Arts Commons wasn't open to like having a conversation about it. And like, why does this work make you uncomfortable? Like, why is supporting work by, you know, queer and trans artists? I'm not the first artist they've censored. They censored Edie Fake's work in, I think, 2006, another trans artist. They built a wall in front of their work. And I know someone who's an artist of color who's had their work censored, like all because Arts Commons, I don't, you know, it's complicated, but it shouldn't be. Like they kind of showed that who they support and who they don't. So that, you know, I think the work for them was too confrontational, which is funny because it's all these film and videos, like these clips are all from stuff by, like, it's popular culture. This is stuff that half the stuff your kids have seen anyways. It's just when I, a trans person, have recontextualized it and put it together to be critical of something, that it becomes controversial. So yeah, that's the only time it's been received poorly, but even then it was like, I had so much love from like communities in Calgary. I know a lot of artists there, and it was like, I felt supported in that. And like, I didn't really lose much sleep over it. I was just like, well, now everyone else knows how Arts Commons like feels about, you know, queer and trans artists, I guess. Like they haven't been doing, I would like to see that change. I would like to see like actual concrete change. And you know, maybe we will see that, but I don't know when. It's been a couple of years. It's been like 3 years almost now. So yeah, other than that, it's been good. I showed it in Portland, Oregon. That was really fun. That was like the first chance I got to do like a really immersive show, like it was a 3-sided projection. So that was good. Yeah, that's my rant about Arts Commons. So
thank you for sharing that. And you already talked a little bit about like the aspect of the sound, but maybe there is other aspect that has been different by showing this work at La Centrale, or maybe in Montreal. I don't know if you want to talk about this or.
I mean, I've thought about it a bit, and like I think more so like, yeah, it's definitely been different. And I feel like obviously a lot of that could be like, you know, the language of the piece is predominantly English with English subtitles. And that's something that I would like to, if I show this work again in the future, like I would like to improve and like have other options for subtitles. Yeah, that was it. As far as different though, I don't, it's a pandemic, it's everything's different this year. It's been really hard to say what's been different about showing it specifically here. Like, I don't think it's been that different. I think just beyond the language thing maybe, but then again, I think, you know, I always think like, well, there's probably lots of French people who maybe don't speak English, but I'm like, I feel like more French people are bilingual than like people like me coming from Ontario living here, and I suck at French. So yeah, different, not sure. It's gonna have to wait until, I guess maybe if I show it again, but yeah, not too different.
Thank you. And you already talked about this a little bit, but did you notice changes in trans representation in media, film, television, and or institutional art in the beginning of the project?
Well, yeah, there's, it's really hard to pinpoint from, like, I'm trying to think exactly when I started noticing that there was an increase in trans representation, but I have a lot of like colleagues and stuff who are more so in like film and then in video art, and a lot of like trans friends who are in those fields, and like the opportunities are increasing, I would say. I'm not saying that it's, again, it's not perfect, but you know, I know trans people who are like pitching shows to Netflix and getting them, they're going to get made, or like doing web series, and like or actually, you know, just trans actors getting hired for trans roles and just roles in general. I feel like that's a really big thing, and I'm not the only one talking about it, but like one of the big reasons a lot of trans people have problems with cisgender people playing trans roles is because we're still just getting our feet in the door as far as being able to just exist and like be on screen anyways. Like, it's a very short history as far as media representation in general. And then you think of like positive, I won't go with positive representation. That's, I don't like that wording, but no, I would say like in the past few years, it's just been, there's been so many trans creative people just coming out of the woodwork, and it's been so exciting to see. Rather, like, and I talked a bit about, like in 2014, there was like, you know, with Laverne Cox on Time magazine cover, and the trans tipping point, where that was supposed to mean that we have like this upsurge in trans representation, but it's, yes, it was starting to get better at that point, but then we still had works being made that were just like making fun of trans people. Like, there was still so many people who were, they're just not getting it. So I think there's so many aspects to it that have to kind of come together. And I think a big part of it is cisgender people in the film industry having that knowledge and understanding and compassion to like do a good job at representing us. Don't do it without trans consultants. And like, if you're going to have a trans character, just hire a trans person. There's so many talented trans people who are acting. Like, it's not rocket science. So does that answer the question? I tend to get off track and like keep going. So
Yeah, there is no track, like, it's okay. So do you want me to ask you another question, or you want to keep going?
I had one other thought to add because I will forget it. So a big thing of this, it comes out every year when it's Trans Day of Visibility, which was March 30. Is it always the 31st? I feel like some people think it's the 31st of March. Trans Day of Visibility, where so many people think that just having adequate and like a variety of representation in media, that is increased visibility, yes, but that's not, that visibility and vulnerability kind of come together, right? That's like, if there's nothing being done as far as like systemic change to actually help trans people in real life off the screen, then like positive representation, like that's only going to go so far. So yes, that's why I feel like the trans tipping point kind of rhetoric is not true. Like I don't consider it to have happened yet. I feel like maybe we're getting closer to that point. But for me, the true trans tipping point is going to be when cis people stop killing trans people. Like that's, for me, because that's what matters. Like things are getting better, but it's not enough. Yeah.
So next question is more about how this piece, A Thousand Cut, is working with the rest of your work, because you have like a performance and video work. So I don't know if you want to speak about how this piece combines with the rest of your work.
I feel like, well, a lot of my earlier work, it's kind of hard. Like a lot of my work has either taken on like its performance, like video documentation of performative acts, I would say. I'm not really a performance artist. I think I performed once live in front of like 300 people, and that was like, was it. So I get shy, but a lot of my work, like my earlier work, is just like me investigating gender identity expression, like using my body. So I'm like, you know what, I'm here, I have a hard time reaching out to other people. I've gotten better at that, but as a young queer trans person on the spectrum, which is something I didn't bring up before, but I am on the spectrum, like autism spectrum, and like doing a lot of masking of that, like trying to hide that when I was younger, and just like focus on like your transness, basically. So like a lot of my work was just like about figuring that kind of stuff out. But I also tried to flip it around and like work with some family members and like do more like experimental documentary work. Just talking to, I have one piece with my brother from 7 years ago. Wow. And just talking about, you know, our various mental health issues and like how we identify with masculinity, and gender in general, and the loss of our mother as like very young children and how that like affected us. So just, I like just exploring, like I like to just research things, and I don't necessarily ever have an end goal, or like I just kind of go with it and see what happens. So this work was a bit different because I knew what I wanted to say pretty much right away. I just had to like find the proof and like put it together. It was more of a puzzle. A very, very emotionally laborious puzzle. Like it was a lot. So yeah, I think the only thing that kind of strings all my works together, or like most of my work, I should say, is like, yeah, that archival impulse of like looking back. I look back a lot, which that's important to my practice. Like I don't see that as being stagnant. I'm always a person who's constantly reviewing who I've been and like where I've been, and it is interesting to let that sometimes inform like, you know, where I am now. So if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you so much for this answer, Beck. Maybe what we can do is open the question to the public. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, ask question in the chat.
I'm also always open to questions after the talk. I know some people don't like to or can't think of things right away. I'm definitely one of those people. Like I'm very findable. You can always ask me questions like at a later point too.
Okay, I'm not talking English frequently, so excuse me.
If you're more comfortable, you can ask in French and me or Mattia will do the translation.
Oui? Okay, but I'm gonna try in English. Okay, oh, a little bit. I don't know if I'm switching the language. I wanted to thank you for your work. I was very moved because the person that send us the link, the Zoom link, say you can go to the website and see the movie, and I saw the 10 minutes or something like that. I was shocked because I'm not as young as you. I was born in the 60s, and I recognize some videos, some extracts that I saw when I was very young, and I was feeling irritated when I was young, but I didn't know why. So because for instance, in the video of Steve Martin, I think I was like, everybody was laughing when we were saw this on Isen with the penis.
Oh, not Steve Martin.
No,
I can't remember his name.
Other Martin, or I don't know.
I remember, yeah, the clip with the, you know, the umbrella handle as the phallus, and like then the reaction and throwing up off. Yeah,
I don't remember that. Is I was saying, I was really thinking in the moment I was sawing your work. Thank you, because we need this kind of work in a social context to make change in people, normal people. To, you know, je voulais pas dire normal dans le sens normal because we're talking about gender, but I was thinking normally I'm using normal for not artist.
Oh.
Okay. So I wanted to see that your job not only in the Centrale but everywhere. We need to see your all like the compilation, the art, the work that you made, like synthesizing all the bullshit and all the good things also there. So it's very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick, I wanted to mention this before I forgot. So this, you know, I like what you said about synthesizing the bullshit. That's, it's pretty accurate. And I just like to make a note that, like, I'm at a point in my practice where I've mentioned this before to other people, is I want to start moving away from this type of work, which is, you know, this isn't joyful for trans people. And I really want to get to like a shift in my art practice where I do, you know, different work that actually is made like for trans people. As a trans person, like I want to make more like work that is like trans T for T cultural production, as Casey Plett, the author, would say. And just, yeah, focusing on trans joy more than this was a very certain, like a particular time in my life. And although I don't think the work is irrelevant now, it seems like less important maybe, or like, I just, you know, there needs to be more from me. I think that's, yeah.
Thank you. Kimura, you have a question?
Yes. Just I was wondering, because you view many films about trans characters, and I was wondering if you're gonna write papers for the mainstream media about that and the evolution of it? Is there anything that exists already? Or are you, as an archivist, willing or wanting to put your insight? And that's the first question. And the second, I have a question. The second question that I can say is, it's like I was wondering, because the trans community is like at the community at large, but did you see any division or like different kind of tendency? And if they are, because I'm kind of newcomer, so I wonder what you think in analyzing those characters. Are there different reaction about watching or witnessing a trans character on film?
Okay. I might have to ask you to repeat the one part after, because my memory is like a match, but I will. The first part. So I, although have a background somewhat in academia, I don't like it. I don't know if I necessarily would need to, at this point, write specifically about this piece in great length, because there are like other people, and like I could try to find some links that I've read a while ago. This type of stuff thematically comes up a lot on like blog posts of like, and a lot of the work that I covered in this piece has been covered by other people, like just writing about in blogs, like more critically, like dissecting the films, like throughout, which I find funny, because I'm like, oh, I didn't read them first. I just reacted somewhat first and like found these clips. So a lot of us are thinking of the same popular culture, but most of these films are like, they're English, it's North America based, not all of them, but so I would be interested, and also need to carve out the time myself to do more extensive research into, histories of representation in like everywhere, basically. Like, I am aware that this is not like, it's a small piece of something. So like, I feel at this point I would rather be, like I said before, shifting my focus into more like just making work for other trans people, instead of like trying to get to the bottom of why is this problematic, and like keep trying to get that into cis people's brains. It's like, maybe those are two separate things, right? Like, I could see this taking more of a like quieter, like an educational reference tool sort of thing, or like with, that could be, this could go a completely different route. But as far as like my public art practice, I'm like, is this serving the people I need it to serve? Like, I don't want to isolate myself more as a trans person, and I'm like, this work might have done that a little bit. Like, I'd rather just make art that brings me joy. I feel like I'm at a part in my life where I need to do that, and the pandemic has obviously been a big part of it. But did I answer the first part a little bit? Okay, and what was the second part of the question?
I think it's the in the large community, the division of is there any division that you notice about how to look at the trans character in films? That was basically the main question.
What I've mostly noticed, I mean, a big part of this work is available online, so I'm not always sure how people are reacting to it. I wish people would reach out like every time like they watch it for the first time and just let me know what they're thinking, because I love hearing that. But I would say, based on my experience creating the piece as a trans person who was socialized as a girl for 20 years, so I'm not trans feminine. I feel like this work is a lot harder for people who are trans women and trans feminine to watch, because they're the ones who are mostly, their lives are being taken far more often, like, than trans masculine people or trans men. And the the history of this misrepresentation, it is predominantly trans women, like, who are the brunt of jokes or being seen this way, and like trans men and trans masculine people generally were erased from a lot of media. So like I've had a few conversations with, you know, community members, or just, yeah, people I've met for the first time who identify as trans in some way. And I have gotten the feedback, it is a lot harder for trans feminine people to watch like this. That's just a fact. And again, this work was not made for trans people, but then that, you know, that's hard. It's tricky to do, like, as a trans person making work for cis people. I guess it's hard to, I had no way of preparing how people were going to react to it necessarily. Like, but there is definitely that noticeable reaction from cis people being like, wow, this is really great. This is such a, like, thank you for this compilation. And like, it allows me to think about things in like this way, that's awesome. That's what the work was supposed to do. But then you have the unintentional, sometimes hurt. Like I'm sure this work has hurt quite a few trans people just because it's a reminder of what we've had to put up with. So it's been a complicated process with this piece. And I feel like each time showing it and talking about it, although I really enjoy having these conversations and like talking about the work, it definitely makes it more apparent that I want to not make work for cisgender people. I'm sure if I stop doing that, you'll still find stuff that you like about my work, but it's not going to be for you. Like it's just interesting. It's like watching this work for me is like kind of going into my high school yearbook in a way, where you're just like, okay, that's what I was, you know, that was a choice. More so a bad outfit choice, but like, yeah, I think that's as most as I can speak to that. Yeah.
Hi. I wanted to ask a question about, well, first I wanted to say thank you for your presentation. And I didn't get to see the work installation in person, but I got to watch it online, and I was looking at the installation. I wanted to ask about simultaneity and movement and kind of attention within your work, and how you've articulated the layout. Yes, because it's such a meticulously edit, but then the presentation, you know, is of many films at the same time, and the eye is really in movement while we're experiencing the montage, the editing, and also the way I see it displayed into this sort of horizontal screen. This kind of reminds me of a film strip, which I was also curious to hear maybe you talk about, and then imagining the scrolling of the names evokes to me sort of an end credit. And so there's a lot of movement happening. I feel like without having experienced it, and looking at the pictures, I feel that that kind of attention being solicited in many directions. So I just wanted to sort of hear you talk about that, if that's a question that has an echo.
Yeah, no, I love that. I always forget to talk about the more of like the technical aspects of the work, or just like the physicality of it, just as an art piece. So I really like being reminded of that. So yeah, the horizontal screen, like the film strip reference, that wasn't necessarily intentional, but that makes perfect sense because of the way I was editing the work and thinking about the work. as, yeah, like making these abrupt cuts. Like, so I was thinking about, even though I was like video editing, it's all digital. I was really being aware of like the cuts I was making and like where that was happening, when the black screen was showing, and like when to cut audio. And like, yeah, the whole intention was for it to be overwhelming, because that's what it feels like as a trans person, to watch all this shit for years and years and years. And that's what you think is normal for a very long time. And then you kind of get to this point where it's like, okay, this is not good. So yeah, it took a long time to figure out, like, yeah, the physical timing of it. And the way that I edited video back then, it was probably not the most efficient. So it took me a very long time to try to figure out like which clips work together, or like which clips, you know, I could like cut from and then have like a breather. Like there needed to be moments where it was a bit of silence, or like a moment where people could like collect themselves. So a lot of that was just, you know, for me, I was like, well, I'm a person on the spectrum with ADHD. If I can handle watching this, then it's probably a good test that like people will be, it'll be overwhelming, but it'll be okay. But I was still having other people watch it and like trying to get feedback on, you know, can you follow this enough? Like, I know your eyes are moving around a lot, and it's a lot to absorb, but that's also was intentional because I knew people would have to go back and watch it more times. And that also just kind of feeds into it's just this it's just like this looping effect that this piece has had in my brain. But this is just what else? I had another thought. Yeah, so that was, honestly, it was just going off of making it overwhelming, but like the right amount of overwhelming and like visually stimulating. So colors came into effect at certain points. Like there was a few of the clips that I selected were basically like just for formal qualities, just so I could have like in maybe those breather moments where it wasn't like a critical point in the piece, but it didn't have to be, because it's not about like specific moments all the time. It was just about the work as in general. And I like what you said about the names, like the credits, the end credits. That's a really very sad, but really it's a beautiful way of putting it. Like the names, like the people who've been taken from our trans communities as like the end credits. But again, that was like my first attempt at doing that as well. It was like a shift from the poster to the text. Like that would, again, is something I wanted to maybe play around with, like typography. I haven't really gotten into how that could affect how it's read. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question or not. But.
Yeah, no, it's great. Very great to hear more about the process, editing process, and then the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you, everyone. It's a little bit later than 6, so maybe we're gonna stop the talk now, except if someone has like a last question they want to ask. But also, as Beck said, if you have like question tomorrow, maybe you can send me an email, and if you're okay, I can transfer the email to Beck. So. And
so honestly, like I'll put in the chat my Instagram, people can follow. That's honestly Instagram, email, that's like the easiest way to get a hold of me. Don't ever try Facebook. I hate Facebook. I don't like it.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, if you want to be funny, I don't know. LinkedIn is just a strange place, but.
Okay, so thank you everyone, and have a nice end of the day.
Thank you everyone for coming. It was great to listen to your questions and be in conversation, and I hope we can see each other in the real world at some point one day.
Yeah, and thank you, Beck, for your generosity.
Thank you for facilitating.
Thank you.
Gracias.